Okay, good morning and welcome everyone to Alpine University's August webinar. Our topic today is Badges of Honor and Profit. Today we'll be exploring the importance of implementing credentialing and badging programs for organizations and their candidates. Today we're happy to feature a guest presenter and Spoke Marketing Agency. Spoke is a marketing and branding firm that specializes in working with technology and professional services companies. We at Alpine Testing Solutions work with Spoke for our marketing and ask them to help us create some badging examples and talk with you about marketing badging programs today. My name is Jana Hairston, and I work on the marketing team here at Alpine. We'll get started right away, but I wanted to go over a couple of announcements first. If you're having problems seeing the webinar today, please close down and restart the WebEx application. If that doesn't work for you, please call WebEx support at 866-229-3239, and you'll see that I've posted that number right in the chat window for your reference. Just wanted to have you mark your calendar. Our next webinar will be on September 2nd. We'll be talking about test design and blueprint development, and we'd love to have you join us, so make sure you register today. If you have questions throughout the presentation, please post them in the question and answer panel, the Q&A panel, that can be accessed at the top of your screen. Please post any of your questions to all panelists rather than selecting an individual presenter, as I will read those questions once we open up the floor for question and answers at the end of the presentation. Last but not least, we're going to cover a lot of really interesting and valuable information today, but we're also recording the presentation. So if you missed something, you can always review it once the presentation is posted to the Alpine website. We'll be sending out an email within a couple of days after the presentation with a link to the recording and the full slide deck. Without any further ado, our presenters today are Blair Harris, who's Alpine Testing Solutions Director of Technology Solutions, and Dan Klein, founder of Spoke Marketing. So the purpose of this webinar today is to provide an overview of the badging landscape, to provide a marketing perspective on how to best implement and leverage badges within your program, and we're going to demonstrate some best practices for leveraging badging. And with that, I'll turn it over to Blair.
Great, thank you, Jana. And just a little bit of history before we jump in here. Alpine recently released its badging feature as an enhancement to its candidate management system, and we had a couple of early adopter clients who were anxious, chopping at the bit to begin using badging within the system. And so I was on several phone calls with them, and they began to ask, well, how do we launch badging? How do we actually do it? And I began being the technical guy talking about, well, you log into the system, then you go here, and they're like, no, Blair, how do we actually launch it? How do we get it out there? And, I quickly realized after a couple minutes that, that's beyond my area of expertise. But I did know some folks that it was right up their alley. Alpine uses Spoke marketing for several of its marketing initiatives. And so we reached out to Spoke to see if they would be willing to have some discussions with our clients around, how to actually market the implementation of badging within an existing program. And the topics and discussion that took place was great. I was feverishly writing down notes, learning a lot from those discussions, and so I thought to myself, this would be a great topic to present out to other clients or potential clients or just people in the industry who would probably experiencing or will experience similar challenges as they get ready to launch badging. So with that, we reached out again to our friends at Spoke, and they obliged us to be part of this webinar and share some of those insights with the group here as well. And so again, a big thanks to Spoke and especially Dan for their willingness to do this. Before we jump into that information, though, just a little bit of discussing the landscape of badging or how we see it, at least from the Alpine perspective. First of all, what is a badge? So when I first heard about badging a couple of years ago as it was starting to enter into the testing market space, You know, I jokingly referred to it as a digital logo, or even worse, a digital sticker, right? That it's just something you get a pin on somebody virtually, kind of an attaboy or attagirl. And that was about the sum of it. But as I learned more, I realized there was a lot more to it. You know, there's a couple of pieces here within a digital badge that are key. First is that it's verifiable. That information that's used to earn that badge or assigned as part of issuing the badge can be verified. So individuals who are displaying that badge to consumers can actually have that information verified. And then the second part is this metadata. So metadata is embedded into the badge, and that metadata then makes the badge portable. So it's easy to exchange that information with other systems. And so that's a key part of the badge, is being able to easily exchange not just the badge or the image itself, but all of the underlying data that's associated with it in these metadata fields. And it can move and be portable with the badge as well. And then overall, you know, badges are issued to recognize an accomplishment, a skill, or an ability of the candidates. And there's lots of different uses for badges. We'll cover those in just a minute. So, you know, why is badging essential in the real world? You know, if you look at how badges have been used in the past with the Boy Scouts or military with medals, or even, you know, police and their badge, it really does a couple things. One, it shows accomplishments, right? From the Boy Scout perspective, it allows individuals to work towards a larger goal. It gives them motivation and recognizes them for the work that they've done. It also shows skills and skill level and ability. Specifically within the military, as you look at medals or stripes on a sleeve, etc. And you know, one of the benefits of badging is it's easily validated by consumers, right? We have digital logos; those have been around for a while, but you don't really know what it took to earn that logo. You don't know if it's a valid logo or if it's expired. Digital badging allows all of that to take place in a very easy, one contained system or solution. And then finally, it's intended to project a positive image for the organization. And so, you know, that's where the marketing comes into play specifically, is that, you know, badges done right can have a huge impact on the program that's beneficial. Badges done wrong could probably have the reverse impact on programs. And so, you know, we're relying on our friends at Spoke Marketing to help make sure that our clients are aware of at least some of the things they need to consider when they're launching their programs and bringing out badging. So, you know, who are the stakeholders for badges? We've identified 3 key stakeholders. First of all are the candidates, the test takers, or the learners, right? They're the ones that as they accomplish the tasks that are required, they're being issued the badges. Secondly are the training and testing sponsors themselves, who issue those badges out, need to make sure that they're being issued for the appropriate things. They've identified, you know, what are the requirements for issuing a badge and where they want to issue badges, right? Not everything that a candidate does deserves a badge. And there's different mindsets and mentalities and reasoning for why you might issue a badge or why you may not. So, you know, programs need to carefully consider and think through that. And finally, there's the consumers themselves, who often get overlooked, but the individuals who will see the badge and want to get some meaning out of it, right? Whether it's an employer and a potential employer who clicks on it to see or learn more about a badge or a skill, ability, or accomplishment that somebody has acquired. It's also partners. If you've got partners that rely upon the organization, partners want to know what individuals know, governing bodies or other programs or systems. You know, one of the things that really excites me about badging that it takes it beyond that digital sticker is the ability to exchange information fairly easily and seamlessly as individuals work upon the same standard or general standard to share badges. So, you know, from our systems perspective, we're all about credentialing and candidate information. And, you know, where we see things going in the future, badges become even more exciting. That if an individual is trying to renew their credential through a continuing education program and they're attending a conference or take part in a training course, that information can be sent over to us in a badge. And not only will we be able to display that badge, but we can mark off the requirements and assign the appropriate continuing education points, et cetera. So, you know, we're excited about that data exchange, and it's one of the reasons that Alpine decided to get into badging. You know, from our perspective, we aren't the final repository for all things badging, but we are a contributor to the badging world, and the badges within our system can be shared out to other systems or to social media and other places. And so we're excited about those prospects as well. So again, how are badges being used? They represent specific verifiable accomplishments. They motivate or encourage desired behaviors. This is kind of the gamification concept, where we can get individuals to move through the appropriate paths within the programs. It's another carrot to kind of dangle out in front of them to incentivize individuals to move forward. And then it also provides recognition for non-traditional learning paths. You know, this is another thing that we're keenly aware of as far as the concepts of like micro-credentialing, or individuals being able to build their own learning path or curriculum compared to having to go down a set path. And so those are two things that Alpine's definitely keeping an eye on to see how things progress in the industry. And then finally, within your programs, they allow for promoting events or programs. So at Alpine, we realized that there's different types of badges, right? As we got into this, we began looking at the badges and realized not all badges are equal. You know, a badge for earning a credential is not the same as a badge for sitting in a 1-hour webinar, right? Very different criteria, very different purposes. And so, you know, as we got looking at badges, we didn't want all of our badges to end up in what we call badge soup, where they're all mixed together and it's hard to differentiate which badges have which meaning. And so we classified these into 4 different categories. You know, at the very basic categorization is participation badges. And participation badges, again, are usually badges assigned for simply, whether it's a program-sponsored event, whether it's a training or a learning course or an online course, whatever the case may be. You know, you get a badge for simply participating. Maybe you attended a conference, but there's no real assessment or measurement of competency with those badges, right? You simply show up, you're there, you're awarded the badge. Critical things for continuing education, and some programs have requirements for certain participation or training courses before they're eligible to test. But, you know, overall, there isn't really a lot of measurement or competency, and so it simply showed up, here's your badge type of award. One other area that we see these could be used in is subject matter experts might be awarded badges for participating in the test development process. That is, they help out in the process. You know, they might receive special recognition as being a subject matter expert or a contributor to the test. Next up the rung is what we identified as achievement badges. You know, these are candidates who reach a predetermined milestone and something we want to recognize. They might be individuals who have been certified and maintained their certification for 5 years or 10 years, or individuals who earn multiple credentials within a time period or pass certain exams within a time period. And this is where gamification comes into play more, where it really promotes candidates to move down the appropriate, or what we would hope would be the appropriate or desired paths. Next are our exam badges. Again, fairly straightforward here. A candidate who passes and takes an exam and passes it could be awarded a badge for their accomplishments. And then finally, at the highest tier within our system anyways, is what we call our credential badges. So these are badges that are assigned or issued to candidates who actually meet all of the requirements for earning their credential, and these badges then are active for as long as that credential is maintained. And so by setting up these different classifications, as candidates come within the system, they can look and see, you know, the different badges they've earned in the different classifications. And as we work with programs, some programs have elected to use all of the classifications, some of them 1 or 2 or subset. And so it's really up to the program and what makes sense as to what type of badges they would be using. And so as we jump here then into some of the hard-hitting questions for Spoke, we'd like to just set up a scenario here. So we've got this company, OSA, Occupational Security Association, a fictitious company that's a test sponsor and has an established credential program. And they're getting ready to implement a badging program with some of these goals. They want to recognize candidates for their accomplishment, encourage candidates to remain current in their credentials and expand their skill set, allow for employers and other stakeholders to more easily verify candidate accomplishments, and then to promote their program on social media and other sites. And so they've reached out. They would like some assistance in how they can move forward, or what are some of the recommendations. A little bit more about their program. They've got 3 different, what they call tiers of credentials. They've got an associate level credential at the very beginning, a professional level credential, and then an expert. I think our slides reverse those a little bit, but at the bottom would be the associate, then a professional, and an expert. And at that professional level, they also have a specialty exam or specialty credential that candidates can earn as well. And so with that in mind, they've reached out and they've got some questions or concerns they'd like to have answered. First of all, how do we distinguish our badges from other badges within our program, right? If we've got all these different levels of badges that we might offer, how do we make sure that they're not getting lost in that badge suite? And then once those badges get shared out to other systems, how do we make sure they don't get lost with all of the other badges that a candidate might have, but that they can clearly be distinguished as OSA badges, and that it's clearly and easily identifiable what the accomplishment was to earn that badge. And then finally, how do we recognize and roll out badging to meet all of our stakeholders' needs? Some of the benefits that they anticipate from rolling out badges is being able to show many types and levels of accomplishments that candidates earn, encourage professionals to continue earning additional credentials, and then provide some additional marketability to their credentialing program. Specifically, get more engaged candidates, get qualified workers that positively reflect on OSA, build some candidate loyalty, and then additional program exposure via self-promotion as individuals who earn these badges begin to share them out and include them in different ways so that they get recognized for their accomplishment, but in doing so also recognize the test sponsor as well. And so that's kind of the scenario that's been set up and that we're going to propose over to Spoke then is, what would they recommend for OSA? How should OSA roll out or implement badges to their existing program and do so in an effective way? And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dan to take the ball.
Can I be heard?
Yeah, I can hear you now, Dan.
Hi. Right. I should always, a marketing guy should always start off with technical difficulties, which is, just mute. Anyways, I'm Dan Klein, and whether you have an agency like ours or you have your own marketing department, what these badges look like is really important. You've heard Blair talk about OSA as an example, so I'm going to kind of walk through some examples and point out some of the features of design and talk a little bit about marketing on these. These badges represent your brand, and using these badges engage in your brand. Let's consider if you're going to promote your company, say with a shirt, or let's go with a ball cap. You're going to want them to wear a ball cap. So you'd have to think about the size and the color and the style. You'd want to put your logo on it. You'd want to put some kind of message, and you'd want them to wear the hat. Maybe if you put a propeller on it, some of you would wear. I'm not judging, but the rest won't. You get the point. Your candidates need to notice and engage in these badges. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the design here and then a little bit about the marketing. So if you notice on this page right here, we have professional credentialing, core, and specialty badges. So if you look, you can clearly see OSA core, the title, and a core architect, and a specialty of saying the lead certified. And if you look closely at these icons, you're going to actually see elements that are part of their specialty. So the overall look and feel of the brand is consistent with the brand of their company, but it clearly spells out what the badge is. If I go a level deeper, and Blair touched on this badge is an example of levels. So a slide he previously printed out, if it was an OSA associate, going to a professional and going to an expert, then, you can, whether this is cliche or not, we use some stars here. So 3 stars better than 2 or 1. And if you look at the icon again and the elements of this, then you can see different levels of the graphic saying there's a little more security each step of the way. This is subtle, and not everybody will notice, but it clearly distinguishes and allows you to see the different levels. And if designed right, they make it then, you know, make it look pretty nice. They'd be proud to put these badges on anything that they're going to share. I'm going to show yet another example here. So this is more of an IT example of going and, sorry, stuttering. These badges show different levels of expertise. So the OSA developer, looking at version 3 is a developer who has met the credentialing standards for version 3 of the software, where an OSA architect meets version 5 of that software, and here's somebody version 4 of the sales. All the colors kind of blend together in the color palette, and this is even a little more subtle difference in what their specialty is, but you can see it, and these badges stand out. I think it's clear to point out, if you design these right, and there's these 3 sets of badges, all of this has a common look and feel, and they can all be used, you know, they could be used on T-shirts. They can be used on you know, logos or anything else you want to use as you go along. Where Blair set out, this is where you want people to engage in this. You need to promote these badges. So people may self-promote, and it'll stand out, and we're just giving you an example of what that might look like in social media. So you might post that yourself and may be part of the record, but this will give you an idea, because in the end, this is all about you know, their personal showing off and helping them get to the next level, if that makes sense. So let's talk about badging. So most of you might think, are probably not in marketing, so you might think about badging from a standpoint of, I design the badges and I'm done. And you do have to design the badges with all of them in mind. So each of these categories, and Blair pointed out 4 categories, and each of the levels, you have to think about how they all look and feel together. But then, you know, you have to go ahead and promote this as a program. So much like you know, a studio would promote a new movie coming out, if you want people to start to engage with badging, then you need to come out with a marketing campaign for badging. I'll answer more questions about that, but I'm going to talk about some specific tactics. So going back to the OSA example, OSA wants to make a big deal out of this, so they actually want to promote this at their annual conference. If they're going to have a booth at the conference and all their candidates and clients are coming to this conference, then they need to announce that it's there. So this is an example on this page of you know, probably an email invitation. You can see where we use the badges and use the brand and create an email that would go out, explaining why the program is in place. It would link to the website for details, any links to the conference, and really explain, you know, how the credentialing is there. Taking it one step further, they are going to set up a booth at the conference. So you might create banners, and you might create sales material as it relates to this. You know, so any kind of sell sheets, you know, any kind of map of how to get, you know, to the next level, anything like that. So all of your booth materials and emails, everything ties together in a case of a campaign. And we'll take that further, and this is maybe the post. It would be really the most important part of this. So it's the follow-up. So now you've got people interested in the program, in the badging. How you communicate that from the very beginning and all the way through is important. So if they took interest, they're going to first have to figure out where they are and what certifications they're going to need to get to first. And each step of the way, you're going to be there marketing in terms of a follow-up of I've reached level 1, or I'm an associate now, I need to be a professional, I want to go to that level. You're always going, if you put the right marketing program together, you're always going to know where they are, and you're always going to be sending branded emails that tie to the next badge, and you know, promote them much the way you'd see like when people check in on a Foursquare, you know, if anybody's played Foursquare, where you go, you've earned a flight badge or you've earned a badge somewhere else. It's treated as a game, and follow-up marketing can work that way and help promote getting to the next step in each way. So part of implementing you have to think about all of these steps. Now, you don't have to write all these down because I think you're going to get access to all of these. So you have to have a checklist to go through in order to start this. So I'm going to read these over and try not to read it in a boring way, but we'll see how that comes out. We got to define the prerequisites and the certification. You know, you have to look at the entire program in whole. You may not need credentialing and participation and achievement. You have to decide which category, if any, or all the categories you want to go. You have to identify all the levels of the badging, so is it intermediate, beginning, advanced, however you want to do it, and draw those portions out. If it's software related, you need to know everything you want them to be certified on and put all of those titles and things on there. You then have to create, you know, and educate the audience. And why do this? Not everybody's going to buy it. Not everybody likes to play games. Not everybody is going to make it a game, and nor do they need to, because, you know, the badges really are you know, equivalent to any of those letters that appear after your name. It's just a little more visual. Some may not get into it all the way. But as they do, so you're going to want to, you know, publicize that to all your candidates and really make a big deal of the program. And ensure adherence to the requirements prior to awarding badging. So you're going to track all of these badges in the system and, you know, look at where they are and are they meeting all those requirements each step of the way. You know, all along the way, you're going to want to educate people on how to participate and how to get social media exposure. Just because you can post it somewhere on social media doesn't mean that somebody knows exactly what to do or what's the best way. And so you build that as part of your programs to communicate with them on exactly how to do it, so that it's easy for them to kind of engage and share. And then you're going to regularly communicate. And so you can do this in a walk before you run kind of thing. Maybe you only have one category and a couple badges, and you get people started, and then you build up as you go. I am now going to turn this back over to Blair, because Blair is going to talk about sharing badges and more. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. And so, you know, as Alpine set out to add a badging feature, we had some requirements in mind. You know, first of all, that badges should be organized and identifiable, at least within our system. And as Dan mentioned, and hopefully outside, once badges get shared outside of our system as well. And so, you know, that's the first thing is how are you going to organize and make your badges easily identifiable? So that looking at it as a consumer of your badge, I know exactly what it means, or should know what it means before I go into all of the details. And again, there needs to be then sufficient information for validation to occur as well. So as a consumer of that badge, I need to know exactly what was completed or done, and what were the requirements that were completed by the candidate in order to have that badge issued. And then, you know, is that badge good for life? Is there an expiration date on it? So all of that information needs to be contained and thought about as far as what will be shared within the badge. And then, you know, for badges to be used, they need to be easily shared and readily available for candidates to share. And so that marketing campaign that Dan talked about, one of its key purposes is to educate the candidates on how to share it, but also then the consumers, right? If I receive a badge for somebody looking for employment at Alpine, I need to know that, I can click on that badge and get additional information. I can learn more from that particular website that it refers me to, and really understand what went into earning that badge. And so all that needs to be considered as far as what information you would like to share, and then how are you going to make that information available to the consumers, and then where can those badges be shared? Here we've just got some standard places, social media sites that badges are considered to be fair game for sharing it, and one of those is LinkedIn. As part of your professional accomplishments or an updated status, individuals may want to share badges. They can tweet it out on Twitter, put it on their Facebook account, or for those individuals using Google+, could even post it out there. So again, you want to provide lots of ways to get badges out in front of individuals and consumers who may want to use that information. The other thing is, badges should be able to be shared in multiple ways. One of the things that we've implemented is the ability for candidates to create a customized email signature where they can go in, they can select which badges they'd like to display, and then have the instructions sent out with the badges on how to create an email signature and then implement those badges within their custom email signature. And the nice thing, again, with badges being portable is all of that information can still be verified from the email signature as individuals receive and want to learn more about what those accomplishments or badges are. The other thing then is Alpine thought about this, if candidates are earning badges, they can send badges over one at a time, which is great, but there also needs to be some way to get a complete picture of what that candidate's completed. And so within our current system, we have what we call a candidate transcript, where candidates can select what they'd like to share out to individuals and then publish a transcript for them to view. And so one of the things that we've done with the introduction of badges is put those in that transcript as well, so that in addition to showing, the credentials, the exams, achievements, and participation activities that the candidate's been engaged in, individuals viewing that transcript can learn more by simply clicking on the badge and going to that validation page. And instead of having to go through, 8, 10, 20 different badges to figure out what the candidate has completed, they can see it all here in one particular location under the transcript. Finally, candidates need to be able to track their badges, right? Are they hitting the intended audience? Are people viewing them? Here are just a couple of examples where, one from our system where a badge has been viewed 42 times, another from LinkedIn where 24 people have opened up that transcript to learn more about the candidate's accomplishments. And then finally from the badge sponsor as well, they need to be able to track, are we getting the response we thought we would to the badging, are people actually sharing it out? And if so, where are they sharing it? And how's it being used? And where are they coming from to validate information? And, so we're excited about being able to provide more of that information to our clientele as well. And then finally, where do we see badges going in the future? As mentioned earlier, one of the things that we see as more and more organizations adopt badging is better opportunities for sharing, and that data can be more reliably shared. So in our current system today, individuals who have completed continuing education activities can come in, they can upload some supporting documentation for a continuing education activity, and then that information sometimes needs to be validated before it goes into the system. But if information could be shared over in a badge from a valid source, that information then could be marked off instantaneously as soon as it's received, and it's so much easier process with less duplication of efforts by having to review something that was already awarded to a candidate elsewhere. And so, that's one of the things that we're extremely excited about as Alpine, is that ability to share data between systems, and then for our system to share data out to other systems as well. We'll get into it when we talk about a centralized repository, but we're optimistically looking forward to a couple of groups to emerge as the final repositories for all things badging. But before we jump there, one of the other areas that we see emerging as well is recognition for non-traditional learning. And so, you've got MOOCs out there where the online, massive online courses that individuals will take. You've got micro-credentialing for individuals to kind of build their own set of learning requirements and what they would like to have included in that path and in the assessments. And so badging opens up the ability to not only support that, but recognize individuals' accomplishments that may not go down the traditional learning path or assessment paths for that matter. And then finally to this concept of a centralized repository, you know, we're waiting for that critical mass to hit to see if organizations begin setting up what we would consider a centralized repository for all things badging. What I think Open Badges refers to a backpack, but we see it as a lot more than that, where, you know, programs can share badges of all different types and all different programs into this central repository. And then individuals who want and need access to that information can come in and begin to sort through it, right? If you're a recruiter and you're looking for somebody with a particular set of skills, you'd be able to come through and use their badges to help identify those individuals. If you've got, you know, employment opportunities you're looking for, or again, you know, learning programs that will want to set up learning paths that require different pieces from different programs out there, those could all be done within this centralized repository. And so we're optimistically looking for that repository as well. You know, we've seen shades of it, but we haven't seen it fully come to life yet. And so we're keeping a keen eye out for that to happen as well, as where we see things going in the future. So, you know, as we look at it, it's kind of a badging 1.0 for the testing industry, with people dipping their toe in the water. But as things move forward, we see a lot of excitement and opportunities around badging 2.0 and beyond. And with that, I'll turn it back to Joanna to field some questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Blair and Dan, for your talking points today. We do have some questions coming in that I'm going to go ahead and start to address. I think the first question will be for you, Blair. When you were back talking about the classification, the 4 classifications of badges, I have a participant who's wondering if you can only use those 4 classifications of badges in your program that you showed us.
Yes, so there is opportunities to add other classifications if need be, and those classifications can also be altered, right? So, you know, some programs may refer to their credentials as credentials, others as certifications, others may change that to a micro-credential. So, you know, there's flexibility in the naming of the different categories, and then as needed, we can add additional categories as well.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to go ahead and remind everyone that if you have questions, you can go ahead and ask them by clicking on the Q&A section and typing your question in and posting it, and we will answer them in the order that they come in. So the second question, it looks like, that I think for maybe both Blair and Dan are, how should or how are companies making distinctions between certifications and badges?
Sure. So, you know, certifications and badges are, while related, completely different, right? So a badge is simply awarded for earning that credential, but it's not in replacement or in lieu of that credential, right? It's for meeting all of the requirements and a representation of a candidate and their skills and abilities or accomplishments for meeting the requirements needed to become certified or to earn a credential.
Great, thank you. Oops, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
And it looks like this question might be directed at Dan. One of our participants is saying that their program is having difficulty developing badges that looks good and is legible at smaller sizes, and is wondering how you go about creating good-looking badges that have to be small. And conversely, is there an ideal size for creating those badges?
But like if you looked at those badges that we showed, they're pretty detailed. And so, you know, those wouldn't look good at a smaller size. So the way that you would do that is create, what we call kind of an accessory badge or a version that looks a little bit smaller for that. Then you'd go ahead and, build out kind of we'll call a backpack or a hyperlink to something. It will go somewhere bigger when you clicked on it, something that they could see more of the badge. But build out a smaller version, and it's just kind of an accessory badge. So that is part of the whole design. So when you thought about each badge, you think about the different sizes and create them all together as well.
And Jana, if you go back a couple slides, you can see that in the validation slide. Yeah, right. Go forward one. Forward two. One more.
This slide.
Yeah, right there. So, some of the smaller badges are part of the email signature, but when individuals click on it, they get a larger representation of the graphic as part of the validation process.
Great, thank you both. The next question that looks like I have here is, what is the business value of badges to Alpine?
Sure. So, from Alpine's perspective, we partner with our programs and want to be able to allow our programs to be successful within the industry. And so badging is one of the ways that our partners in the testing programs can share out, through their candidates, the accomplishments that individuals are meeting, and have their program and their marketed through those accomplishments as well. So, one of the decisions we made early on is individuals that are currently, or programs that are currently using our system for managing their candidate data, don't incur any additional fees to have badging made available to them. Because part of the sponsorship that we want is for programs to be successful, and in programs being successful, then Alpine's successful. And so, we want to see badges out there. We don't want price to become an issue for programs that would like to use badges, but don't want to pay the additional fees to have those badges used. So one of the things that we've done is part of our core offering with our candidate or credential management system is to include badges as part of that. So there's the initial fee for being on the core, but there's no additional fee to use badges or to leverage badges within the system. As our clients are successful, then we're successful.
Next question we have here is, our participant is wondering if badges or badging metadata can be made available via QR codes for use in printed material, business cards, collateral, marketing collateral, etc.
Yeah, and the honest response to that is I don't know. That would be something we'd have to look into, but I haven't heard that that's available, but it might be something that could be done.
And even if it was, the QR codes are not taking over the world, so usage probably doesn't show whether you even should or not, if you could.
Sure, and we have a follow-up question, Blair, to your great response regarding the business value of badges. The participant is wondering specifically how badges provide value to mostly promotional value to Alpine, marketing lead gen or direct revenue producer. So really talking just a little bit more about how we would use those promotionally.
Sure, and that sounds like a question actually coming in from other people who may be administering badges. So, it's not something I want to get a whole lot more into detail around some of our decisions and why we've made the decisions we have. If that individual is interested, I'd gladly speak to him more in detail. But, again, from Alpine's perspective, we look at it as a partnership with the programs that we work with, and being able to make sure that they can get that information shared out. And again, as we look towards the future of badging, being able to exchange data, right? So if individuals take a course or attend an event, and that information needs to be provided and sent to our system so we can mark off the appropriate requirements for continuing education, or for eligibility to start testing, you know, we don't want to have a large barrier or cost issue associated with that. You know, there's, again, some upfront fees for using our system and to get started. And so those fees take into account what we need to have in place to cover costs for badging. And again, we don't want badging to be an obstacle for our clientele and being able to share out that information. It should be something that's, you know, looked at and covered. And we've also, you know, looked at there really isn't a per cost issue, right? Once badging's set up, bandwidth is really inexpensive, the data's all there. So, you know, to charge per badge seems a little redundant. In that, you know, once it's there and it's set up, whether it's set up and shared one time or 500 times, or issued to, you know, issued to one candidate or 500 candidates, the costs between the two are very minimal.
Thank you, Blair. Questions come in. How does the program monitor and control individuals potentially stealing badge images and sharing them or using them in terms of misrepresenting themselves?
Sure, and you know, again, badging provides that verification or validation, right? So if the image is stolen, it's still missing the validation piece, and that's where the metadata comes into play. So, you know, if you don't have the appropriate metadata associated with the image, then that validation piece will be incorrect. And so, you know, it does provide that extra level of security. And the way that just Open Badges operates is that you've got the metadata associated with the image and the validation piece. And so, you know, again, it's not saying that it's impossible for somebody who wanted to be really sophisticated and set up their own set of, you know, technology to mimic badging, but it becomes a much bigger obstacle to do so.
Okay, and it looks like we might have another question here. How have you noticed lower badge acceptance rates for participation badges versus other categories of badges?
Sorry, say that one more time.
Have you noticed any lower badge acceptance rates for participation badges versus other categories of badges?
And, you know, that's a great question. Not something we have the details on yet. As mentioned previously, badging just went live here less than a month ago, I think. And so we still don't have enough information as far as how programs are currently having their badges leveraged to be able to answer that. You know, find me at ICE or at ATP, and I'll be glad to answer that at that point.
Well, great. It looks like we have a couple of more moments for questions if anyone would like to get additional questions in. Okay, well, I guess we will just go ahead and move on. I wanted to say thank you again to our panelists and our attendees today. We really appreciate you joining us. Our next webinar, as I mentioned earlier, is September the 2nd, and it will be on test design and blueprint development, and we would love to have you join us. Registration links are up at alpinetesting.com in the event section from the newsroom link. We once again thank you for joining us, and we hope you have a great day.